Hello, everybody. It is Sunday, March 23rd, 2025. Welcome to episode 108 of the Old Mage MTG podcasts with your hosts, Old Mage Alex and Old Mage Steve. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about the king of the fatties, Jamie Wakefield. More specifically, we're going to learn about how he builds his fatty decks. But before we get into that topic, I have a favor to ask of you. While you're here, please consider subscribing to our channel on YouTube or on whatever podcast app you use. You can also find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you hear us talk about any cards today that you think you'd like to add to your collection, consider making your next purchase on tcgplayer.com. And if you do so, consider clicking our affiliate link when you make that purchase. You can find our affiliate link in the description of the podcast below. It's right down there somewhere, right about there probably. And then scroll down just a little bit more, and then it's right there. Before we talk about Jamie Wakefield and how he builds his decks, I wanted to ask you, Alex, what's been going on in your Magic the Gathering life since the last episode? It's been about 3 weeks.
Has it been
Working on,
3 weeks already? Ooh.
I think so. Working on anything new, buying anything
Not a
new?
whole lot. Like tinkering with a few decks. I haven't really been buying anything, one or two cards. But I did notice that with the new Tarkir set, a card that I have, Tiamat from Forgotten Realms, has gone up a bunch in price. They're going for like 40 to 60 some dollars, depending on which the regular or the borderless version of it. So I was excited about
Tiamat.
that. I'm gonna keep watching that. I don't really expect it to go up a lot more than that, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
You're getting richer, Alex. Every
Yeah,
day, getting richer.
every day. I don't have that
Not
one. That one's even
this
more.
one.
That's like the fancy one, Secret Lair version.
When did Tiamat first come out? Do we know? Was that it for Adventures in Forgotten
Oh no, maybe
Realms?
no, that I was wrong about that. I guess that was the what's the Secret Lair one look like? That's the one I have there.
The
It's like
Borderless.
60 some dollars right now.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I mean it's definitely spiking.
Yeah. Go back down and look at the Secret Lair version.
Secret Lair. Adventures in Forgotten Realms. Secret Lair
That's the
series.
regular Adventures of Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. Secret Lair series. I remember these showcase
How's that different from
printings.
the other Forgotten Realms one? Is it different art?
This right here. How is this one secret
Yeah,
from the
go back
Secret
down
Lair
again.
series different from?
And then that
I mean,
one of the Forgotten Realms ones.
I don't see anything else with that style.
Okay, it might have just been like lag from when you were floating over a different one then. Yeah, okay.
But is this when Tiamat first came out? Adventures in Forgotten
Yeah.
Realms. It's not an older
It
card.
came out with
Okay,
that one you have now and then the borderless one that I have.
okay.
There's
I
a
didn't pay
card
much.
called Dracogenesis that's coming out. I think that's part of the reason why it's spiking. You may cast dragon spells without paying their mana costs. It's a 8 casting cost enchantment.
And Tiamat is 2, 4, 6, 7. But it's also all the different colored mana.
Yeah.
And then also, this will be one of many giant dragons you would run in that deck, probably. What is this other card called? Dracogenesis?
Yeah.
Is it a enchantment? Is it
Yeah,
a
it's a
one
red
use?
enchantment.
Okay.
2 red, 6 colorless, I think.
From Tarkir Dragonstorm. So this is a set all about casting big dragons. Here's an enchantment for casting big dragons. You could use it to cast your Tiamat. So everybody's buying Tiamat, and now Alex is practically wealthy and about ready
Rich.
to retire. I don't have anything that I own that's been spiking in price lately because of Tarkir, but I have been filling with a deck. I've been filling with my White Weenie deck, Alex.
Uh-huh.
Let me find that White Weenie deck.
I got to see it in action recently.
I knew a little bit about what you've been up to in your MTG life. because we met up at Ryan from Ohio's house and we played some Premodern and a little bit of old school.
Mm-hmm.
And I tested my Imperial White Weenie deck, which is a white weenie deck full of shadow creatures and Imperial armor. I tested it against some mono blue Dreadnought and some Enchantress. I was running some cards in this deck that could potentially help me against Enchantress, like Cataclysm. Didn't go well for me. I was running some cards in this deck that can potentially help me against Dreadnought, like Core Haven, like Swords to Plowshares, Disenchant, like Aura of Silence, which could also help against Dreadnought, like Whipcorder, which can tap the Dreadnought. None of these things really helped me all that much. I needed more help, Alex. The clock is so short with Dreadnought. All I have to do is disrupt whatever you're trying to do for 1 or 2 turns, and then you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit Link also was not cutting it. I used to have Spirit Link in here. You can see it's not in here any longer. I'm considering some other cards to help me better deal with Dreadnought and Enchantress, and I gotta test these out a little bit, see if they can help me in any way. But I'm considering Orange Chant, which right now I have in the sideboard, and Abeyance. Right now I just have one in the main board, and this deck moves fairly fast for a creature horde deck. Imperial Weenie. If I get a shadow creature with Imperial armor on it, I can knock my opponent out in a handful of turns or so. So I'm thinking maybe I just try to buy myself some more time against decks like Enchantress and decks like Mono Blue Dreadnought. Casting spells like Orange Chant or Abeyance will prevent the, Enchantress player from going off and casting multiple 1 or 2 casting cost enchantments and drawing a whole bunch of cards and just filling up their board in just 1 or 2 turns. I can prevent them from doing that for 1 or 2 turns by casting 1 or 2 orange chants. Target player can't play spells this turn. If you played the kicker cost, creatures can't attack this turn. I could also potentially use these cards, Abeyance or Orange Chant, to delay the mono blue Dreadnought from getting the Dreadnought on the board by 1 or 2 turns. Hoping if I can buy myself 1 or 2 or 3 turns with these spells, maybe I'll have a better chance against those decks. Probably still have trouble with them, but I think maybe Abeyance and Orange Chant, low casting cost instants that slow my opponent down will help me out more than some of these other spells I'm running will. I also like the
Yeah, we
fact that I
talked
could
about it a little bit yesterday, and I think it's a good call.
throw these spells out there, the Abeyance or the Orange Chant, to to pull out any counter spells,
Mm-hmm.
as counterspell bait, and then I can follow up with my disenchants or my swords or whatever, especially against the dreadnought. Preferably disenchant against the dreadnought instead of swords. Don't want to give them 12 life, but something I'm thinking about. Something I'm going to do some play testing with my white weenie. Haven't tried it out yet. I think I might also just take worship out of the main board. Doesn't seem to help me all that much.
Yeah, you could just put like another disenchant in.
Yeah. Another disenchant, maybe another abeyance, maybe an orange chant. Maybe a main board Phyrexian Furnace. I think that helps me more often than worship. And if it's not particularly useful in the matchup that I'm playing, I can just sack it and draw cards, so it replaces itself. Kind of like abeyance. That's why I chose to run one abeyance in the main board.
Yeah.
If it's not doing a whole lot of good for me, I can cast it, get some use out of it, and it replaces itself. It has that phrase on it, draw a card. That's a good phrase for a card to have. But anyways, that's what I've been thinking about lately. Also, one more thing I wanted to mention. I've also been watching some old school gameplay. I do this every once in a while. I sit down and I start up the Timmy the Sorcerer YouTube channel or Farmstead MTG's YouTube channel. Take a look what new videos they've posted. And last week, Timmy the Sorcerer posted a match from the semifinals of the Uthden Troll Cup. It was the deck versus Mono Red, and this was pretty fun to watch. It was a mono red deck. I'm putting mono red in quotes because he actually runs some Badlands, a City of Brass, and one Swamp in this mono red deck because he also spiked Mind Twist and a Demonic Tutor.
Good reason to
Yeah,
add black.
but this red deck was a little bit different than a lot of other red decks I've seen. I mean, it goes four lightning bolts, but doesn't have any chain lightnings in it, what you see with a lot of mono red decks. It has more control elements in it than some other mono red decks that I'm used to seeing. It runs two
Yeah,
main
you got
board
the
Ices,
ices.
a main board Jam Day Tome, and
I see those earth elementals there.
it runs some bigger creatures that are good blockers. So it runs four Suchis, which can trade with opposing Suchis, can block opposing Mishra's Factories, Earth Elementals, which can block opposing Suchis and live. Kills them too. Earth Elementals are 4/5, right? I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
And yeah,
A
so
few,
that survives against Ernoms and can't get killed
yes.
by, yeah, Sengirs or Saras.
Yes. Well, yes, it can't get killed by them. But yeah, so you can attack into them, which is very helpful, especially against Sengirs. Very helpful. And it runs three Blood Moons. Blood Moon was the key to this matchup. I mean, he's playing against the deck, which is five color deck, greedy mana base. It just performed exceptionally well. Made it all the way to the finals. It won this match, semifinals, made it all the way to the finals. Disappointing showing in the finals, but he pretty much got mana screwed, which is unfortunate when you're running nearly a mono red, like a nearly monocolored deck to actually get mana screwed
Yeah.
in the finals. But
I like
this
this deck
is
though.
it's a very nice deck and it's pretty affordable for old school. I mean, what is expensive in this deck? Chaos Orb and Suchis. You can get reprints of Blood Moon. They're still pricey, but I think they're around 30 or something. You can get reprints of the Mishra's Factory, reprints of the Strip Mine, reprints of City of Brass, Earth Elementals.
Yeah, just
Pick
like
your.
your demonic tutor and your Suchis. And I mean, and I feel like the Chaos Orb is probably not strictly necessary. I don't know.
I mean, it's always great in any sort of monocolored deck. Doesn't have a lot of removal
Yeah.
options, but yeah, not needed. It won't be quite as good without it, but not needed. If you're trying to build a budget option.
And
So if
two
you're interested.
Upton Trolls down there, is that
Oh
correct
yeah,
also?
yeah, yeah. So this guy got he was at the Upton Troll Cup last year too, and he won an award for the best unpowered deck. That's the key here. This is a deck with no power nine, made it to the semifinals. Last year, I don't know if he ran the same exact deck or something similar, or maybe just a different unpowered deck, but he got an award last year for having the best unpowered deck at the tournament, and I think that he was awarded this Upton Troll altar as a
Oh,
prize for having the best
oh,
unpowered deck.
cool.
So he was running in this deck and he went with another Upton Troll too. So if you're interested in mono school, or sorry, if you're interested in old school Magic and you don't have power, and you're trying to think about what kind of different options you have for a fairly competitive build, this is a great match to watch. Just wanted to mention that. And with that, Alex, I think we are ready to get into the main topic of today's episode. The main topic of today's episode is the Wakefield School. So I personally am a big fan of fatties. I'm an occasional player of fatties, but I've never had much luck with fatties. There is one mage, though, from the pre-modern era who is known for his success with fatties. He's called the Master of Fatties by some, and I wanted to learn from him to figure out ways to build better pre-modern decks full of fatties. He was so successful with these strategies that he's widely referred to as the king of fatties. I called him the master of fatties, but he is the king of
Master
fatties.
of Fatties is pretty sweet though. That sounds good.
That mage is Jamie Wakefield. He'd probably be happy with either title, master or king. Master actually does sound better. It's like you earned it. King, you don't necessarily earn. You're just born into it.
Yeah, yeah.
So Jamie Wakefield was a Magic player, of course, and a prolific writer on the dojo. He might still play Magic, but he's not. I don't really see him out there in current day in the Magic world. I got the idea for this episode when I was reading an old Mike Flores article that was originally published on the dojo, I believe, called the Wakefield School. And in this article, he lays out what he believes people typically think of when they think about the Wakefield School and how Jamie Wakefield builds decks. He goes through some of Jamie's more famous decks, and then he describes what he believes are really the true tenets of the Wakefield School and the most important things to keep in mind when learning about how Jamie builds decks. So the most commonly, or what most people believe to be the tenets of the Wakefield School, according to Mike Flores, are that decks in the Wakefield School run one color, that fatties are the only true road to victory.
Very good.
The decks typically follow a middle of the road beatdown strategy. So these aren't your typical fatty decks where you just play a bunch of early game mana ramp and you try to ramp out a high power to casting cost threat and force your opponent to react. They are more mid-range decks, more reactive on their own, where they try to neutralize your opponent's threats and then drop the fatty.
Hmm.
That seems to be the strategy he typically follows. And then this one, Alex, this one blew my mind. 62 cards, 26 lands. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Aha. I love that 62 cards. 26 lands seems like a lot, but once you get up to 62 cards, you need more lands. So, you know,
Also, you're running fatties. I do 61 cards all the time. Never in my damn life did I think of doing 62
ah,
cards.
I did. I used to push it up to 63 sometimes back in the day. I remember playing. Like, I didn't want to add a whole extra block of four to the deck, but a few times I went up to 62 or 63.
That's crazy.
I just want more. I just want more
That's crazy.
cards.
You're getting greedy. And it doesn't work out for you probably most of the time. 62
Yeah.
cards, is this a strength of the Wakefield School or a weakness? Might be a weakness. I don't know. He also mentions, or he highlights at least, the importance of a global reset in many Wakefield decks. It's not one of his
Ah,
bullet
okay.
points here, but he highlights that importance of the global reset. He talks about that later in the article. I'm trying to find that right here. The other main feature of the Wakefield strategy is that it features the answer. The answer in the above decks, we will get into some of these decks later, manifests in global resets like Navenril's Disc or Joko Hops. Jamie's strategy, especially when he is put in a situation that he cannot normally go for the remove that and then try to outlast you game, is to blow everything up and then out top deck the opponent. This is a strategy that I never really adopted in decks that I've built. I don't really play this strategy very often. I've been thinking about it more and I've tried it with my Imperial Armor White Weenie deck. The idea being play a 1 or 2 casting cost shadow creature. Turn 3, play the Imperial Armor to make it 5/5, 6/6 unblockable. And then turn 4, cast a Cataclysm. My Cataclysm goes off. I get to keep 1 land, 1 creature, 1 enchantment. The 1 creature, 1 enchantment, of course, is my shadow creature equipped with Imperial Armor. My opponent gets to keep the same similar number of cards, but my assumption would be that whatever they get to keep is not going to be a five
Yeah.
five or
They
a
probably
six
don't
six
have an
shadow creature.
enchantment yet.
They probably don't have an enchantment yet. So I was attempting to follow this type of strategy with that deck. It was not working out for me. Everybody kept building back faster than me.
Yeah.
Was not working. But I wasn't playing 26 land, and I wasn't necessarily playing fatties to top deck. I was top decking 1/1s, 2/2s. Wasn't working out for me. So it's a viable strategy, but it's something I need to tweak a little bit to get to work for
Yeah,
me.
it seems like maybe like, you're front loaded a little bit. Like you can bring out that big threat early, but if they neutralize it, then later on, like you're just pulling out small creatures.
That's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
It wasn't working out. Every time I cast Cataclysm, I've said this before. I only put this deck together because I wanted to play Cataclysm. I wanted to make it work.
Don't you hate it when the reason you made a deck like then doesn't make the cut for the deck?
And I think every time played Cataclysm, I've lost the game. I think every time. I might have won one. I'm probably like I'm either like 0 and 7 upon resolving Cataclysm or 1 and 6. I don't know.
Yeah.
So right now, Cataclysm is just in the sideboard, and it might be taken out totally. But those are the commonly held tenets of the Wakefield School. What people commonly think of when they think of the Wakefield School and Jimmy Wakefield decks. Flores then went on to go through some of his most famous decks, and I want to take a look at some of those famous decks right now. The first one being Brothers Very Grim. Jamie's known for what I've seen some people call black fat decks. I don't think there's one deck that he ran that was called black fat. I just think it was like a style of deck that he typically ran, a mono black deck with fatties, mono black fatties. The one highlighted in this article is called Brothers Very Grim. It operates as what Flores called in this article, it operates as what he calls a destructive control deck. So this destructive control deck has some card advantage. The card advantage is present in the form of 2-for-1s in the form of efficient discard spells. Card advantage is present in the form of spells on a stick and in the form of board ripes. He also runs a lot of removal. So remember, this isn't just a totally aggro deck. There's also control elements to it. So he runs Contagion, a potential 2-for-1, a global reset in the form of Navinral's Disc. And then the idea is just to control your opponent's board state and then to kill over a handful of turns or less with whatever big creatures are legal for you in the format at the time. So he runs like Sangiers, Necro Savant, cards that can kill you in 5 or less turns, essentially, if your opponent can't deal with them.
Okay.
He runs 18 creatures. The creatures are the most interesting cards in the deck to me, so I'm going to go through those right now. He runs 4 copies of Carrionet.
Okay.
This is a really interesting card that I remember the art from back in the day, but I never played it. I don't remember anybody ever playing it against me. It is 1 colorless, 1 black, 1/1 summon skeleton. You can pay 2 colorless and 2 black, then you remove Carrionet and a target creature from the game. That creature's controller may pay 2 colorless to counter this ability. Use this ability only if Carrionet is in your graveyard. So it is mana intensive, but it has a great effect. You can use it to strip any of your opponent's cards from the game. I also like that you could play it early game for 2
Any
mana.
creature.
What did I say? Any
You said
card?
any card, but
Any
just
creature.
you meant creature, I knew.
I did mean creature, but I don't always say what I mean. So this is
But no,
why I
you're
need
right.
you here.
It's targeted removal from the game in black with no restrictions, so that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I like it. Well, another thing I like about it is, it's low casting cost. You can get it out for 2 mana. It's a 1/1. You can bring it out early. You can attack with it or block with it. Your opponent has to deal with it, but they might not necessarily want to, you know, because
Yeah,
it
that might
because
not want to set you. I didn't think about that. It's kind of like there's like a deterrent to killing the carrionet.
it's more
Yeah,
powerful in your graveyard. So they might be wary to attack into it. They might be wary to block it if you're
true.
blocking with it.
These are good points. I'm kind of liking this the more I think about it because, yeah, like you said, it's not a dead card in your hand early on. You can cast it and get it down, and then use that ability late game if you want. And
Yeah.
it also works with the Necro Savant. You can sack it to put the Necro Savant into play.
Yeah, if they don't do anything to deal with it to remove it from the board, yeah, you have ways of getting it into the graveyard. Uh, I like these cards that sit in the graveyard and that you can do things with once they're in the graveyard because sometimes your opponents just forget about them. That
True.
does happen. I forget about things in my opponent's
And it
graveyard
gives,
sometimes. It comes
it
back to
effectively
haunt me.
makes your hand larger. You have those options sitting in your graveyard. So,
Yes,
it's a card that replaces itself, sort of like drawing a card
yes.
indirectly.
This is the type of card. What did I want to say? Card advantage that he runs in his deck. It's not just like Ancestor Recall, drawn 3 for 1. This is another form of card advantage. Card you can
Yeah,
get multiple uses out of.
I like it. Yeah, all these are multiple use cards, Necrotal.
Carrying it also has some interesting rulings on Gather that I noticed.
Oh,
3.952 on Gather, a rare from Tempest. A ruling from 2004, 10/4/2004. Since it is exiled as part of the effect and not part of the cost, you can activate its ability more than once.
So I could pay 8.
That's what I'm getting from reading Gatherer. So that's a shit ton of mana. You're not necessarily going to be able to do it, but it sounds like you can activate it more than once.
That's crazy.
Also, I mean, that's what the ruling says. Since its exile is part of the effect and not part of the cost, you can activate its ability more than once.
Okay.
I don't know.
Unless we're misunderstanding what that means.
It also says remove target carrionet and target creature from the game, so it seems a little bit weird that you can just remove target carrionet once and then target 2 creatures. But because it doesn't say creature parentheses s close parentheses. But the Gatherer page is specifically telling me.
Yeah.
I'll read it again. Since it is exiled as part of the effect and not part of the cost, you can activate its ability more than once. I don't know why you would want to activate the ability. Could there be some kind of strange rule where it's like, yes, you can activate the ability more than once, but you can only kill one creature with it?
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe
So
they're
it's
talking about
possible.
like activating it and then someone does something and then you activate it again in response to that and it
Yes.
still only works once, but you've just activated it more than once.
So let's go with that then maybe. Maybe you can activate it more than once, but still only use it to kill one creature.
Yeah. Either
Somebody in the
or. That's
comments can tell
something to
us.
look into though.
Yeah.
I'll try to look into this after the episode.
Also, since exiling is not part of the cost, I like this a lot, actually. Exiling is not part of the cost. It is an effect. This is whether or not I don't quite totally understand the first rule, as we've just discussed, but regardless of that, I like this second part. Since exiling is not part of the cost, if it's countered, you can try this again later.
Oh, okay.
Because if the target creature isn't removed from the game, Carrynet and the target creature are removed from the game at the same time. You don't have to remove Carrynet from the game to then remove the target creature from the
Yeah.
game.
So I mean, if that going back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe you can do it twice because if that goes on the stack, remove carrying it and target creature, that goes on the stack. Uh, if you could put
That's true.
2 copies of that effect on the stack, when the second one goes to resolve, it might not care that the carrionet's not there anymore. It might still just resolve half of the effect. I'm not entirely sure.
But I like the fact that it could be countered, but you can try it again.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
You won't lose the carrionet.
You won't lose the Carrynet.
Huh. I'll have to play with this card more.
It seems worth giving a spin here and there. I don't think I've ever played it.
Hmm.
I like
I
it.
think their ability to pay 2 also like always weighed on me when I saw this. I was like, you have to pay the 4 and maybe they can still counter it. Seemed like
Hmm.
too many steps to get through. But I mean, you can just use it as an instant whenever it's convenient and they don't have the 2 mana.
Yeah.
Just plan it.
And they often don't have the 2 mana. I mean, it's a big ask to have 2 mana held up all the time for something
Yeah.
that's sitting there in the graveyard.
Mhm.
At a minimum, it slows you down. Slows down your opponent's game plan. He also ran 2 Necro Savants. I wrote 4 Necro Savants in the notes, but I don't think he ran 4. I think he ran 2. Let me see how many cards are in this deck that I have on Moxfield right now. Are there 62? There are 62 main decks, so this is the correct number right here. He ran 2 Necro Savants. Unless I screwed up the number of some other
When
card.
Savant is by itself, I have no trouble pronouncing it and knowing what the word is, but when it's mushed together like this, I want to call it Necrosavant.
You can. You can still
No, I
do
won't.
that. I mispronounce words all the time. Necrosavant, 3 colorless, 3 black, summon Necrosavant, 5
Don't
5.
don't do this because it's gonna stick in my head now.
So it's a 5 5 for 6. Not
Okay.
incredible,
Not incredible
but
yet.
it's always hard to deal with a 5 5 body. But 6
Hmm.
mana is a lot. And then you can pay 3 colorless and 2 black, sacrifice a creature. That creature can maybe be your Carrionet. Put Necrosavant into play. Use this ability only during your upkeep and only if Necrosavant is in the graveyard. So you still have to either cast it or get it into the graveyard somehow without first casting it and having it get killed.
Yeah.
And then and you have to you need 6 mana to cast it. And then even if it's in your graveyard and you want to bring it back, you need 5 mana just to activate that ability. So, Carrionet has a mana intensive effect. Necrosavant is even more mana intensive. So we're getting into a lot of mana intensive cards here. He does run 26 lands, but it's still, this is a lot of mana that's being
Yeah.
required for these things. It's a card that I never played, and I was actually surprised to see here. A recurring threat with 5/5 stats, not terrible. I do like the fact that if it's late game and you pull your 1/1 or a Necrotal or something to 2/1, you can always convert these smaller body creatures into a bigger body creature late game. So that is nice when you're playing a deck that has some control elements to be able to convert a spell that you draw later in the game or a creature that you draw later in the game specifically
Yeah.
with low power toughness stats into a high power toughness stats creature.
Uh-huh.
But again, it just takes so much mana.
Is
One
there a
more
way in here? I mean, I don't mean to get ahead. Is there a way maybe to get it's only going to save you 1 mana, but can you get that into your graveyard without casting it in here?
contagion.
No, that removes from the game.
Remove a black card in here from the game. Yeah, okay, not contagion. You could hymn to Torak yourself.
Nice.
And maybe get it in. So that's it. Hymn to Torak
Okay.
yourself.
So
So
no.
no good way. Yeah.
Okay.
Necro Savant. Alex, do you recognize this fella? Do you recognize the Necro Savant?
Is it the vampiric tutor guy?
It might be Zarku, Necro Savant. This might be Zarku.
Oh,
It's the
Zarku. Okay.
shallow grave guy.
Oh, okay.
The same art, the same character in the art for Shallow Grave. He is, I believe, Zarku the Necro Savant. Shallow Grave art was also painted by John. It's hard for me to read that. John Coulthart? Yes, John Coulthart. Wearing the same robes, Alex.
Huh.
He's got
So
the
he is.
same hairstyle, same
So he
face.
is.
I would recognize that Widow's Peak anywhere. So there's your big body in Brothers Very Grim. He ran 4 Necrotals. These are terrors on a stick. Necrotals 2 colorless, 2 black, 2/1. Summon Necrotal has first strike, and when it comes into play, bury target non-artifact, non-black creature. This was solid. This is solid removal back in the day. I really liked it when it came
Yeah,
out.
I
In
always like this
Visions,
card.
I loved the enter the battlefield creatures in Visions. I still want to play these creatures all the time. Maybe not the best things to run in Premodern, but they're still serviceable in Premodern.
Mhm.
They're just solid. They're solid cards. And then he has a classic OG finisher, 4 Sengir Vampires, 3 colors, 2 black, 4/4 flying, gets 1/1 counter each time a creature dies during a turn in which the vampire damaged it. And then he runs 4 Steel Golems. This is a card that I've been looking at over the last several months, thinking I need to find something to run these in. Like they're not terrible, they're kind of interesting. They have beautiful art. Steel Golems are 3 colorless artifact creature, 3/4. You cannot play summon or artifact creature spells when the
Okay.
Steel Golem
But you
is
can
in play.
use your 2 graveyard creatures from the graveyard still.
You can, yeah.
Like you could bring the Necrosavant into play while the Steel Golem is down because you're not casting it.
Yeah, so if you were running a graveyard style deck, you could have some Steel Golems that you plop out early game for blockers,
Yeah.
and then you can get your things into your graveyard. Now,
Or
most of
even
the
natural
graveyard,
order deck.
yeah, I
Something
like
like
that
that.
actually.
Sneak attack.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if I could play like this actually I like this idea actually. A mono green control style deck. Steel golems and like creatures with fog effects and stuff. And then natural order for fatties.
Yeah, yeah. Use mana elves or birds to like get your steel golem out on turn two, sack one of them to the natural order. That's pretty
Steel
fun.
Golem can't be bolted, can't be
I like
shot,
this because I'm pretty sure I have steel golems from Weatherlight, and I always just assumed it was a card I was never going to play.
can't be incinerated, can't be pyroclasmed, can't be summoned, can't be hailstormed. It could be all of those things actually, but it's not going to care about it. It has 4 toughness.
I love 3/4. 3/4 is a great uh, stat sheet to me.
That's a good lane to be in.
Yeah.
Lots of things can't deal with the 3/4.
hmm
What else is 3/4, Alex? Is Wildfire Emissary 3/4? I'm typing that in right
I'm
now.
trying to remember old. I'm trying to like go back. Like there's a few legends that are 3/4, I think, you know.
Give me some 3/4s.
It's either 2/4 or 3/4, Wildfire Emissary.
I think it might be 2/4.
I was gonna
Nope,
say
I'm gonna say
Cockatrice, but I think that's
it's
2/4.
2/4. Damn it, it's 2/4.
Yeah. There's
Okay.
one or two cards from Legends that are 3/4.
They kill a Mishra's Factory
Thanastian
and survive.
Falconer.
Okay, you love Sebastian Falconer.
It's not letting me search for it. I'm spelling it wrong, probably.
But yes, it's not a bad. It's not. This is Steel Golem also. It's not a bad threat to like ritual out if you're playing a. I don't. It's a little bit confusing in this deck because he has 14 other creatures that he wants to cast at some point. It makes it a little bit harder.
Yeah. Thanastian
Uh,
Falconer's 4/4, by the way. I was wrong.
okay.
Anyways.
So I'm not really sure how it fits in this deck. The deck has done well, so obviously you know, it had its place, but I want to put it more into heavier control decks with fewer creatures, or at least creatures like you mentioned. You know, you want a natural order out instead of casting, or animate from the graveyard instead of casting. But it's in those decks especially. It's not a bad threat to ritual out turn
No,
one.
yeah, I like it with Ritual too. It's a good point. Like,
I mean, yeah, it can still get disenchanted. It can still get swords, but you know, the worst thing about Ritual Hippie is you just pray that they don't have a bolt or a shock or uh fucking Onyaro Bee Sting or so many other things that can do 2 damage or 3 damage. You know,
yeah,
fewer things can deal 4 damage. It's an artifact creature, so then you'd have to worry about disenchants and naturalizes and crumbles and
yeah.
stuff too. You get the point.
You know, people don't want to waste their disenchant maybe on a 3/4 vanilla creature.
That's true. A lot of the times, maybe I would prefer that
If
use
you
it
don't
as
know what else is
disenchant bait.
coming,
Yeah, use it as disenchant bait. Some refer to it as the bedpan elemental, by the way, which I see. I see that. You can. Is there a bedpan theme deck you can put together in Premodern potentially? I don't know. What would a bedpan theme deck even be?
get some urns in there, some
I was thinking more like defecation and urination related cards, but there is none of that.
no, no.
There's none of that. Sorceries. 7 sorceries. 3 drain lives, 4 hymn to Thorax. These are straightforward. They're
Yeah.
classics. If you
Going
can
hard
play
on the Drain Life though, I like that.
if you can play 4 hymns, you should probably be playing 4 hymns. Drain lives are nice. I love X spells. I always used to put a couple X spells in decks back in the day. I feel like I don't do it as often any longer. Don't know why. They're really good. I like them, especially if this X spell helps you gain life. You know, comes in handy. They're just versatile. 8 instants. His instants are 2 Contagion, 4 Dark Ritual, 2 Diabolic Edict. The Contagion, again, potential 2 for 1. And it's one of these cards that you can, you know, pitch a card to cast. So it's always great to have an option to play a spell when you don't have any mana open.
Yeah, it's a good combat trick. It changes, especially when you're playing
Changes a
Sengirs,
lot.
being able to pull out a contagion at instant speed can shift the balance and get your Sengir a kill.
Yeah, if they don't know you have them, you can really use these kind of spells to turn the tide, do something unexpected, like you said, a combat trick. If they do know you have them, it's something they always have to keep in the back of their head. Oh, he doesn't have any mana open, but does he have a contagion? How many cards are in his hand?
Yeah.
For a Dark Ritual, you can ramp out a fatty, Or you can feed the activation cost of some of your creatures. So I like the Dark Ritual in decks like this, where you can use it early game to ramp something out quick, but then also late game when you don't need it to ramp out something fast necessarily, you still have
You want
activation
to play
costs
two
that you can
spells in one
feed it
turn,
into.
you know.
Yeah. But you still have activation costs you can feed it into. I like that.
Yeah.
You can always use this. I guess essentially you could use it to ramp out a Necro Savant even early, late game. You're like ramping it out from the graveyard.
Hmm.
And then Diabolic Edict, more removal. Something gets past your discard. Use this to establish what I think Flores called in this article a permanence hostile environment. That's a big part of the Wakefield decks.
I like that.
Make sure
I like
they're
that philosophy in
permanence
general. I like having
permanence
removal.
hostile. So you have discard, but if something hits the board, you have plenty of cards in this deck that can deal with permanence. They get past your discard.
Yeah.
Artifacts, just three. Three copies of Navinril's Disc. It's a global reset, a hallmark of the Wakefield decks, as we've discussed. And then lands. How many lands, Alex, in a Wakefield deck?
26.
26. Four Mishra's Factories, 18 Swamps, four Wastelands.
Okay.
This is the deck that won Wakefield a spot on the Pro Tour back in '98. So he played Brothers Very Grimm at a qualifier, I guess. This
Huh.
got him onto the Pro Tour.
So, like, going back to the Steel Golem, since you're playing three discs, you know, you might be holding some of your creatures in your hand. You play the
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Steel Golems and the what's its face, the Carrionet early,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you wipe them, you don't care.
That's actually a
Even
good
the
point.
Necrotal, maybe, you know, you cast that early as creature removal, maybe get a couple turns of use out of it. Then you can nuke those three creatures, save your Sengir and your Necrosavant
Mm-hmm.
for later.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to play this, I think.
And then even if you have the opportunity to bring out like the Necrosavant early and it dies, you can bring it back from your graveyard if, you know, that's the way you have to, you know, play the game.
Yeah. This would be a fun deck to just leave up like today and just like give it a spin. It's going to struggle
Yeah,
against a
just
lot of stuff, but
practice piloting it and
yeah,
see like how it all works together.
yeah. This it seems like it would be a pretty good solid, like a pretty solid starting point for
Uh-huh.
playing around in mono black and
Yeah, I
premodern.
like it.
Not sure how I would revise it exactly. I haven't done any mono black piloting and premodern. I've never been a mono black player, but I think this wins some games and probably playing it a few times give me some ideas of how to upgrade it for the current day. What else, Alex? He talks about three decks. He being Mike Flores.
Hey,
Mike
wait.
Flores.
Hey, wait a second. Go
Okay.
back to it. Was that in Moxfield?
Yes.
Can you look at the mana curve down at the bottom?
It's all over the place.
Okay.
That's funny you say that too, because I believe somewhere in this Wakefield School article, he mentions like the non-traditional mana curves you see. The deck has sort of an okay. He talks about it in the context of the deck that I'm not going to talk about. Actually, we're going to scroll past it.
Oh, okay.
But
The slide deck down here.
there's a slide deck highlighted in this article also. Has an eccentric mana curve for a slide deck 70326, but Jamie's an eccentric designer. This
Okay.
is also an unusual
Yeah, it's
mana
not as
curve.
bad as I thought it was going to be, though. Like just looking at the bar graph.
My mana curves tend to be very traditional. They start much higher, like up here, and they just kind of slope down.
Hmm.
What was I going to say next? Oh, second deck he highlighted in this article is called Phoenix Hops or Wakefield Sly. I'm going to scroll right past that one. You can read about it in this article if you choose. And I'm going to move on to this is just it's an Ivory Gargoyle slash Joko Hops style deck from this era. We've
Okay.
talked about these a little bit in previous episodes. I think these were the early days of this deck. He might have been one of the people, if not the person that like first started piloting these types of decks. He was at least early on, one of the early developers of it. But I'm going to move past that and go to what is probably his most famous deck. It is called Secret Force. It's also Jamie's all-time favorite deck. And I'm going to show the version of Secret Force that earned him a Pro Tour invite in 1999. I believe it's this version right here, highlighted in the article. Something really important I need to point out about this deck. It is not 62 cards, Alex.
Uh-oh.
It is 61 cards in the main deck.
How many
And it is
land?
not 26 land, it's 22 land.
Two. Okay.
I think some of his team members got in his ear and were like, what if you take your 62 card, 26 land decks and then just don't put 62 cards in them? It kind of ruins some of the fun, but that's okay.
Yeah.
He still wants,
But he has 8 mana elves in here, so and Wall of Roots, so I feel like
and Gaia's Cradle was now printed. So I think you have to make some adjustments.
oh yeah, Gaia's Cradle
Yeah.
too. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
for sure, yeah. Don't need as many lands.
Yeah, 8 mana, 12 mana moles. Well, not
What's
12
the
mana
first
moles.
card
The
there?
Wall of
Top
Roots
left?
is not a mana mole.
Elvish Lyrist.
Elvish Lyrist, yeah.
Lyrist.
Lyrist. Elvish Lyricist is what I always want to say. Elvish Lyrist. Destroy target enchantment. It's like an enchantment version of Scavenger Folk. There's also a Druid that does the same thing, and I think people will run those more often, especially in certain.
Yeah, I think I looked at a druid like that when I was working on my commander deck.
If you're in an environment where Engineered Plague is played and you're playing a lot of elves, sometimes they like to, if there's a druid that does something similar to one of the elves, they'll like to put that in so you don't get everything wiped out if somebody plays Engineered Plague and names elves.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Especially if it's your enchantment removal. It's really good to have that one not be an elf if it's beneficial in most cases for your opponent to
Yeah.
name elves.
Yeah.
Anyways, Secret Force, not 62 cards, not 26 lands. It's 60 cards and 20. I wrote 60 cards. It's 61 cards and 22 lands. And I think it was stated here somewhere in the article, a teammate requested a ban on the 26 62 card decks, saying, can we all just post 25 land 60 card decks, which are the same but better? Maybe. Who knows? Probably yes. Probably yes. There are 28 creatures in this deck. I'm going to go through those. 4X Elvish Lyrists. This was pre-naturalize. But also, even if it was in the era of naturalize, in the Wakefield School, you play creatures on a, or you play spells on a stick. So maybe he would still go Elvish Lyrist. Why play naturalize when you can play a slower naturalize? It's easier to kill or easier to get rid of. This is just 1 mana, 1/1. 1 green, 1/1. Pay 1 green, tap it, sacrifice it to destroy target enchantment. He ran 4 Fyndhorn Elves, 4 Llanowar Elves, early game ramp, late game targets for the deck's sorceries, like Natural Order and Overrun. Two great things about these cards. They make some of the early game plays in these ramp heavy mono green decks more important. You know, they give them an important late game role as well.
How many overruns?
3.
3. Okay.
I might have seen Jamie in a interview he gave somewhere say that Overrun is actually his favorite all-time card. Really? I can't remember if he said Verdant Force is his all-time favorite, Overrun's like a close second, or if he said like Overrun, or if he said Verdant Force might be his like might be the most important for his decks, but Overrun is his favorite. I don't know. Either way, it's up there. It's one of his top cards. And 3 Overrun is way more Overrun than I would ever think of playing, but that's what he ran in Secret Force, at least this version. Four spike feeders and two spike weavers. We've been seeing the spikes show up a lot in decks from this era. They provide a nice control element to this deck. So we have a creature heavy deck. We have some fatties in this deck. We have some ramp in this deck. This is all things you typically see in mono green and green fatty decks, but also we have some control elements now. We have some removal elements. Three Uktabi orangutans, another spell creature on a stick, or a spell on a stick, I should say. When it comes into play, destroy target artifact. And then you have three Verdant Forces, the best
Mhm.
fatty ever printed. That's what Jamie Wakefield said about Verdant Force, definitely. The best fatty ever printed. And
I've
then
always loved that.
four Wall of Roots. I remember you playing this card when it first came out. I think
Oh,
you
with natural
were
order, yeah.
natural ordering Verdant Force, yeah. You probably
Fit
didn't even
together
see
like,
these.
huh?
You probably didn't even see these decks when they were like hitting the Pro Tour and stuff. You probably just were like, Verdant Force, natural
No,
order. That's
it's just
sweet.
an obvious, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do if you like end up with two verdant forces in your hand? Like if it's in your draw, you mulligan, but like what if you like, in the first two turns or whatever, end up with verdant forces in your hands and then like
4x Wall of Roots. I also want to say that. 4x
sorry.
Wall of Roots. So if you end up with two Verdant Forces in your hand, well, that's a bad draw. You probably do just mulligan if you have
Yeah.
two Verdant
But
Forces in
but
your hand.
after the first turn when it's too late to mulligan,
Five,
say
six,
like you
seven, eight.
draw them early,
Oh, yeah.
you
It's
can natural
not
order huh?
it's not great, but I will say in this particular deck where you have eight Manimals and you have four Wall of Roots, and
You can hard cast it.
in addition, now you have
Guy's
Gaia's
Cradle. Yeah,
Cradle
you're right. Yeah.
printed.
You
I
can
think
hard cast them if you need to. Okay.
I think what you do, I think the calculus is probably different if you're in a world where Gaia's Cradle doesn't exist, but this does make it a lot more viable to hardcast for Force.
Yeah.
It's still not your ideal hand though. Yeah. Sorceries. Four Creeping Mold, just great versatile removal spell from
Mhm.
Visions. Two colors, two green, destroy target artifact, land, or enchantment. You have four Natural Order. That's here to summon the best fatty ever printed. And then you have three overruns. This is a great finisher, especially when you have a board full of 1/1s. I
Well,
mean,
and the spikes, because with the spikes you can tinker around and then overrun, and then you have creatures of different power and toughness. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like you can kind
Well,
of make one of your elves a little bit big prematurely, and then when you overrun, it's really big. Or
yeah.
you can make a couple elves, 2/2 or 3/3 before the
Yes.
overrun.
Yes. And I faced a mono green control deck a few weeks ago locally. And the spikes are actually a huge pain in the ass. I was playing my white weenie deck, which was built to help me deal with like one huge fatty that might be coming my way. It was built to try to help me deal with a dreadnought coming at me or a huge terrorvore coming at me. That's I have the whip quarters, I have the core havens, I have in addition to my removal, I have ways to tap down one big creature or neutralize its combat damage. And this mono green control deck, it was pretty good at controlling the board, so the games went long. He had a ton of mana built up, and he had multiple spikes. So he would attack, and when I would core haven one of them, he would just move the counters from one to the one that I didn't core haven. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
like they were really nice. Like I haven't spent a lot of time in my life playing spikes and decks, but if you can get them in a long game where you have a lot of mana built up to do some things with, the ability to move those counters around can be a real pain in the ass for your opponent. So yeah, you point that out for
Yeah,
Overrun.
shuffling it around back and forth. Yeah.
Overrun, three of those. And then lands, 16 force, three guys cradle, 3x wastelands. So what to say about this deck? Not only is Wakefield's most famous deck not 62 cards, 26 lands, is also one of his more aggressive decks. So this is a there are definitely still control elements in it. You have versatile removal, creeping mold. You have spells on a stick that have removal effects like the orangutan, the lyrist. But it's more similar to your typical mono green fatty deck that's designed to be able to ramp out your fatties. He has all the mana moles. He has the four wall of roots. He has the Gaia's Cradle. You can hard cast Verdant Force. What I'm getting at here. So these are two of Wakefield's most famous decks. Now that we've gone through two of his most famous decks with Mike Flores, what does Mike Flores have to say about the Wakefield strategy and what he believes are the true tenets of the Wakefield strategy? He mentions this towards the bottom of the article. I'd say the first true tenet of the Wakefield strategy is never run non-interactive card advantage engines. So there are things that aren't in these decks that were very common, and by things I mean cards, spells, that were very common in the competitive decks from this era. We didn't talk about his red-white Joko Hops deck, but in a lot of decks from that era that ran Joko Hops, that ran Ivory Gargoyle, they would also run Thawing Glaciers. There's no Thawing Glaciers in his deck. That is a non-interactive card advantage card. It slowly over time helps you draw more land, helps thin out your deck. It provides you with a form of card advantage, but it doesn't interact with your opponent in any way. He typically doesn't play things like this. He was very active in the Necropotence era when Necropotence was dominating. He ran mono black decks, but he didn't play Necropotence in his mono black decks. He looked for other forms of card advantage in his mono black decks that could 2-for-1 his opponent or uh, eliminate something from his opponent's board, but also leave him with a creature on the board to attack with. So don't run non-interactive card advantage engine. That sounds crazy to me because these are some of the best. These are some of the best cards in the game. These are typically some of the best cards printed in different sets, these non-interactive card advantage engines. But it's not so crazy when one of your main tenets is win with fatties. And
Yeah.
he points it out here.
Percent. Yeah.
Jamie claims that running card advantage engines, non-interactive card advantage, glut a player's hand with too many fatties when he's running a Wakefield deck. Even with the huge amount of mana and mana acceleration the Wakefield decks run, they can't keep up with that, as many of their threats cost 5 mana or more. It's just better to top deck and save the slots for actual answers rather than the cards that go and get mana or fatties or answers. So it makes sense in
Yeah.
that context. Yeah, it makes perfect sense in that context. This is a very this is a very weird second tenet. Wakefield probably wouldn't call this a tenet of his deck, but it's just the nature of his decks. Make your deck really bad against Winter Orb. Nobody sets out to like make a deck that's bad against Winter Orb, but just when you build the decks that he likes to build, they just tend to be bad against Winter Orb. It's a weakness and a function of his preference for fatties, really. I personally been doing the opposite decks I've been building since we came back into Magic. I've been trying to stay low to the ground, been trying to cast something every turn. I've been trying to build decks that can do well even in the face of prison elements like Stasis, like Winter Orb, like Sphere of Resistance. I have decks full of 1 and 2 casting cost spells. When we were reading about Fires of Yavimaya, probably like a year ago, some episodes we did on Fires of Yavimaya decks, I just remember what I heard a couple of the big players from that time say, if you're going to play a 4 casting cost spell, it better win the game. Which is very different than how I used to build decks. Very different from these decks we're seeing.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm running lots of 1 and 2 casting cost spells. That's kind of how I'm building decks now. I'm seeing what I can play in the colors that I'm trying to play, in the style of deck I'm trying to play for 1 and 2 casting costs. And if I go above
I've
that, it's got to have a major effect.
Yeah, I've been trying to do the same thing because like you were just saying, it's kind of against my older instincts. I've been trying to really trim down, what cards I play unless they're like super strong or they're just like the linchpin of the deck or like the
Hmm.
win condition. Playing a lot of lower casting cost cards.
But
I am
you
trying to
can,
play fatties though, so I'm playing
yeah,
like, ways to cheat the fatties.
you can do it differently. You just need to change the way you build the decks.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to take that in consideration. You need to change your strategy. You need to change the type of spells that you run with these high casting cost cards.
I really like part of this point coming up here.
We'll see if I highlight the part that you really like, and
Okay,
if I don't, then you can highlight it.
I will.
The third tenet. A couple things to say about this third tenet. This is just generally a good thing to keep in mind anytime you're building decks. And then also, I want to say it's easier said than done. Third tenet is make your deck strong against control.
Yeah,
So I say it's easier said than done because control decks, I mean,
they
they're
control.
often at the pinnacle of nearly every meta. They're really hard to deal with.
And
They're
anyone who
often the
has
best
one
deck.
and has tested it and worked on it a long time, they've tried to work out, every way to, do what, you know what I mean? It's a bad way to say it because everyone's trying to practice with their deck and refine it, but like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with you what you're saying. I think what you're saying, I would say this is true too. Control players, heavy control players, tend to bring a different level of rigor to their magic
They
to their
want to make their
magic
deck
playing.
airtight.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not like me, where a lot of the times I just want to go hang out somewhere and turn creatures sideways. The control player at the table is usually the most serious one, the dedicated control player. Uh, One thing he says here: the Wakefield strategy is just really disruptive in general. A lot of the Wakefield cards are underused, and an opposing control player just doesn't know what to counter. So this
That's
is a
that's what I was looking at when I read this paragraph. I was like, I love that philosophy. I like to try to find underused cards. And yeah, if you're playing a deck that they don't really know what you're doing at first, you're like putting stuff down, they're like,
yeah.
I'm not sure what the game plan is here. They don't know what to counter.
And I also thought I wanted to add something here. They won't know what to counter, or in the context of a card I see people play all the time in Premodern, they won't know what to name with Meddling Mage.
Yeah, yeah. Or just remove in general. Yeah.
Yeah, or
Have
remove
that
in general.
removal.
If you're playing Brothers Very Grim, nobody's gonna name Necrosavant or Carrion Net. Maybe they'll name Navindral's Disc or something.
Yeah. They're not going to name Necrotol probably if they
No.
don't know you have it yet.
Secret Force a little bit easier. Name Natural Order or Verdant Force. I'd probably name Natural Order. And then second, I'd name Verdant Force. But then still, there's ways to, if you can't Natural Order, the deck is designed to be able to hardcast Verdant Force. If you can't get Verdant Force out, maybe you have an army of 1/1s that you then overrun. So like, there's still other ways to get around your opponent, your control opponent, blocking your or neutering or neutralizing your one or two big spells. He also mentioned Scragnoth in here. I want to start putting Scragnoth in the sideboard, at
I
least
haven't
in some
ever
of my
tried
mono
it.
green decks. Neither have I, but
Non-counterable, right?
yeah. We've already talked about the presence of main deck spoilers like Scragnoth. Scragnoth is 4 colors, 1 green, 3/4. You love that. Can't be countered. Protection from blue. I think Kabu Chameleon also can't be countered.
Okay.
Those are two green cards that are like 3/4 and 4/4 maybe. Can't be countered. Tenet 4. I love this one. Crush Sly. Just do it. Kill every single creature or gain more life that they can eliminate while beating them down with a toughness 4 creature that they can't bolt. There we go. Toughness 4 creatures. Crush Sly. I think about this often when building decks. Again, I don't always crush Sly with my decks because Sly's also pretty good too. But it's also a good thing to keep in mind. How does this deck pair up against Sly? Because it's a deck that's generally strong most of the time and it sees a lot of play because it's budget typically. It's also fairly easy for newer pilots to operate. So I think it'll be a deck that a lot of people will start with. It's not necessarily easy to win a tournament with Sly, but it's easy to go like 50-50 with Sly or whatever.
Yeah, to do
So you
okay.
see it a
Yeah.
lot. So, if there's a creature with pro red, I gravitate toward that. If there's a creature with 4 toughness, like you said, I gravitate towards that. If there's something in my deck that can give me some life gain to keep me alive for 1 or 2 more turns out of their bolt range, I go with that. And then this is a funny one. This is also one that I really like very much. Use only very bad library manipulation. And then Mike Flores goes on to say, this is where most critics of the Wakefield School, primarily myself and EDT, come into conflict with Jamie. The Wakefield School will never run a card like Impulse, arguably the best cheap search card in modern Magic, but it will run a card like Sage Owl, basically a neutered Impulse that happens to put a 1/1 creature into play. I love Sage Owl.
Yeah, a 1/1 flying creature. They're selling it short.
No.
I.
Curiosity next turn. Then you got a 1/1 flyer that draws you a
Yeah,
card.
card draw engine.
It's an interactive card draw engine, too.
Yeah.
Uh, Basically a neutered Impulse that happens to put a 1/1 creature into play. Like we said, a 1/1 creature with flying that you can put Curiosity on. The Wakefield School will not go find creatures with Survival of the Fittest, but it will sacrifice them to natural order. Inherent card disadvantage unless we are talking about an active spike or verdant sapling token.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like the more I read this, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
You were essentially raised in the Wakefield School. You shouldn't even know it.
Yeah.
You could have been a
Well, like
professor at the Wakefield School.
survival of the fittest is undoubtedly very strong.
Yeah.
But I feel like my initial instincts when I look at it is that, I underestimated a little bit, I think.
We also weren't playing when Survival of the Fittest was printed.
Right, yeah, it wasn't out, so we didn't see it. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funny because I kind of underestimate survival of the fittest, and I like really love natural order.
I also really love Natural Order. We had an ongoing Natural Order bit on the show for like 6 months. I'm still waiting for the answer.
Don't you
Jamie
start
claims
again.
Jamie claims this is because his decks are so creature heavy, even if Sage Out isn't actually a fatty. I mean, why have an impulse if you can have a bad impulse, but also a relatively useless creature? I don't appreciate
Well,
how you're
but
framing that, Michael.
yeah, I mean, like, what deck does he use Sage Owl in, or is this totally hypothetical?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know. I haven't come across his Sage Out deck yet.
well, because like he has Overrun in the deck we just looked at. So
Yeah.
something like I know that didn't have blue in it, but something like a Sage Owl would not be that useless in a deck with Overrun,
Yeah.
right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, unless they get rid of it, and then you won't be able to benefit from the overrun. But yeah, I mean,
True.
yeah, I know what you're saying.
But who's
I
going to
know what
waste
you're
their
saying.
removal on a Sage Owl?
It's a good point. Not somebody who disrespects the Sage Owl, and then bam, next thing you know, you're taken out by a Sage Owl. Could happen.
But it's already done part of its job once you bring it in, you know what I mean? So then
Yeah,
it's like if they get rid of it, they're like it's putting them in a kind of an awkward position, I feel like. I don't know.
yeah, it still did some of its stuff.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff basically comes down to win with fatties, have fun casting spells, and I think that's where the Sage Owl comes in. That's the spirit. That's I think part of what I enjoy about these Wakefield decks that I'm looking at. You can see that there's just a spirit of fun there, goofing around with creatures, playing creatures
Yeah,
that do
trying
unexpected
to
things,
reach a goal in the deck that's sort of like thematic.
playing the cards that not everybody else plays.
Hmm.
It's part of what I like
Thumbs
about
up.
Magic. Play the cards, man.
Yeah.
When people are like, "Why would you play this card when you could play this other card?" And I'm like, "Everybody else plays that other card.
Yeah.
I want to play this one." Also, maybe they won't name it. They won't name it with Meddling Mage. Also,
Yeah. And if you thread the needle perfectly, then you're like, I made a deck that's like even better with a card that other people overlooked, and you're a hero. You get a
it is
parade.
more fun that way. It
Yeah.
is more fun that way.
Yeah. The one thing I have trouble with here is don't make your deck more than one color. I almost never make monocolored decks, and I should kind of force myself to actually sometimes because some of them are cool and it's kind of a fun deck building exercise.
Yeah.
But I usually at least splash something in.
I never used to make monocolored decks, but the last year and a half in Premodern, I've been gravitating mostly towards monocolored decks
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm using it as, like you said, an exercise to help
yeah.
me
Practice.
explore the Premodern card pool and get to know the cards in each color and get to know the strengths of each color.
Hmm.
Uh, it's been it's been a useful way, I feel like, for my mind to wrap itself around the pre-modern card pool because there's a lot of stuff I'm still trying to learn. And it's just easier for me to, like I said, learn the strengths of each color,
Yeah, like learn a color. Yeah.
learn the best spells in each color by running different monocolored decks. I
Hmm.
was doing a lot of mono green. Now I'm focused mostly on mono white. I want to make uh, a mono blue deck next. I'm not sure if I want to go blue skies, which is what I was originally thinking, or if I want to kind of go a route that's less creature focused, because most of what I've been doing has been heavy creature focused. So I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And then I have a mono red slide deck too, which I don't really play that often. But anyways, I have thought recently it would be fun to go a control route with monocolored cards or monocolored decks that aren't blue. Make it like a red control deck, green control deck. There's some good options there. But yes, back in the day, I never did monocolored decks. Back in the day when dual lands were growing on trees,
Yeah.
just play five color everything, and none of us had blood moons. None of us had blood moons. Maybe one person had one blood moon or something.
Yeah.
But then we never really wanted to play because everybody else wanted to play with their dual lands. Anywho, that's the Wakefield School. I enjoyed this article. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Flores. I don't know if people can still reach you at madmanpoet@hotmail.com. Not sure if that's still
Eh,
active or not. But if it's not, they can find you on Instagram. I follow you on
yeah.
Instagram, Mike
We'll,
Flores.
we'll find him somehow.
They can listen to you on the Spike Colony podcast with Mike Flores and Lanny. That's the end of segment one, Alex, which I called the Wakefield School. I'm going to move on to segment two. This is going to be a relatively quick segment. In segment two, we're going to discuss some recent old frame market moves. We've noticed some market moves in old
Oh.
frame MTG. I want to talk about some cards that are spiking in price and talk about why maybe they are spiking in price. I'm going to start with unfulfilled desires. Alex, I forgot to ask if there's anything else you wanted to say about the Wakefield School. I don't think so.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that discussion. I thought it was very interesting. Yeah, I liked seeing those decks and some of the philosophy behind them. It was refreshing to me. But no, nothing else to add.
I got to find some interesting write-ups if they exist on anybody else's like deck building styles.
Yeah, like a
Because
specific person.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
unfulfilled desires. This is a enchantment from Mirage. It is one colorless, one blue, one black. You can pay one colorless and pay one life, draw a card, then you choose and discard a card. If I didn't say this already, it's a rare from Mirage. It is reserve list. Current market price of $20.63.
Dang.
Just the other day, it was a $1 to $2 card. Like
Wow.
literally just the other day.
Yeah.
I've often thought, I saw this spiking and I was like, oh, let me check my box. I got to have some of these. I swear I bought some of these. I did not buy some of these, but I've often thought that I should just buy a playset of every reserve list card with the words draw a card in the text,
Hmm.
especially the cheap ones, because at some point this is going to happen. I did not do that. It 10x in price in roughly a month. And I was like, what the hell's going on? It was because people wanted it as an addition to their Eternal Might. This is what I gathered from an MTG Stocks article. People wanted it as an addition to their Eternal Might Either Drift Commander Precon.
Oh.
The commander in that Precon is an Esper zombie wizard. Esper, Alex, if you don't know, that's what the kids these days call white, blue, black.
Oh. I did not know.
What is that zombie? Tenmet? I think that's what I'm reading.
Sounds right. I think I've seen that recently.
Tenmet neck Nakumons? Damn it. I can't zoom in on the thing I'm trying to find. It's on my
I
other
can find it.
computer. It's on my other computer. Let me do the scan. Okay, Temet. It's Temet, not Tenmet. That's why it's not coming up. Temet Noctum's Will. It is a legendary creature. It is a zombie wizard. It's quite cheap, but Unfulfilled
I'm
Desires is not. It's 50 cents. I guess that makes sense. It's in a
I
pre-con.
mentioned this one or two shows ago. I think it was causing something else to spike.
Okay, maybe we talked about Unfulfilled Desires 2 shows ago and we forgot.
No, it was a different card.
It has Vigilance, Menace. It's 4/4. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, zombies you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So basically, you just get a few zombies on the board, like five, and then just utilize any
Like
spell you have
five.
it, five specifically, and then utilize. You could try four, but you're asking for trouble. Utilize so four, five specifically, and then utilize any card in your deck that's black, blue, or white that can draw you a card, and it gives +1/+1 to all five of your zombies. Right?
Yeah.
So I think people are just buying it because it's an enchantment. It's just 3 mana. It costs 1 mana and 1 life to give +1/+1 to all your zombies, which is probably a good trade-off. So I'll wait till those unfulfilled desires come back down to $2, and then I'll buy them for the next time this happens.
Yeah. Just wait.
And then it won't happen. So that's why unfulfilled desires is spiking. Another one that I noticed was Drinker of Sorrow.
Aha.
And
We've talked about this, and I couldn't remember if we already talked about it on the podcast or not.
I don't think we did. If we did, you're
Get
getting
a
it
double
again.
dose.
Yeah. Drinker of Sorrow is 2 colorless, 1 black, a creature horror, 5/3. It's a rare from Legions. Drinker of Sorrow cannot block. Whenever a Drinker of Sorrow deals combat damage, you sacrifice a permanent. It has a current market price of $4.58. This was highlighted several weeks ago in an MTG Stocks weekly winners article
Hmm.
from February 13th. And it's an example of a card that's actually spiking in price due to interest in Premodern, I believe. I think that's the only reason this is going up.
There's
It's a
there's there's also an either drift
okay.
reason, but it's both.
I'm seeing that right here. It's a common include in the new green black tempting worm deck that people are talking about in
Yeah.
Premodern. It also mentions something about either drift here. In either drift, we just got Calaxion Hunger Tyrant, which is a 7/2 for 3 mana in black, or Rotting Regisaur. I'm sure you can find other creatures for the same mana value that fit the bill. Okay, so these are just examples of power crept versions of this, I think. This is a 7/2 for 3 legendary creature crocodile.
What?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's going up because of anything in either drift. I think he was just highlighting even more powerful versions of
I see. Okay.
three casting cost black
I gotcha.
creatures in either drift.
Yeah. But yeah, this deck, this deck was kind of fun to me. We've talked about tempting worm before, sort of mockingly. Like I was noticing it one time and I was like, this card looks like it could be used for something one day would be fun.
A budget, yeah, for some budget brew pre-modern because it was cheap. It was a cheap rare
It's
from
janky. Um, but I
Onslaught,
like what
maybe.
they've done with this deck.
There are formats where power creep doesn't happen since new cards aren't introduced into the format. So you don't have to worry about your 3 casting cost 7/2 black creature. You can still
Yeah.
play your Drinker of Sorrow. One of these is the community created format Premodern, which consists of cards from the set's 4th edition, The Scourge. New cards will not enter the pool, and thus cards aren't outclassed. Because the format mainly consists of older cards with a lower supply, prices are more easily manipulated, especially when these cards are on the reserve list. Drinker of Sorrow is not on the reserve list, but still, it is true that it's easier to trigger one of these price spikes for one of the old reserve list cards. But yeah, it's getting played in this black-green aggro deck that revolves around playing Tempting Worm and other weird, high power, low casting cost black or green creatures with downsides.
Yeah, super low mana curve here.
And the idea generally is to start by stripping your hand. They tend to run quite a bit of uh, discard. So 4 Cabal therapies, 4 Duresses. I'm also seeing people running what's the Mirage discard spell? I think it's 3 mana, but it causes your opponent to discard 2 cards, one randomly and one non-random. It's a guy,
Yeah.
he's looking like Dizzy in the artwork. You
Yeah.
know what I'm
I know
talking
what you
about.
mean, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah. So you strip some cards out of their hand. That means when you play your Tempting Worm, they hopefully have fewer spells to drop from their hand. If you don't know Tempting Worm, when Tempting Worm comes into play, each opponent may put any number of artifact, creature, enchantment, and or land cards from his or her hand into play. So you want to strip things out of their hand first, then you play your Tempting Worm, which
Hmm.
is a 5/5 for 1 colorless, 1 green. Drinker of Sorrow, whenever it deals combat damage, you sacrifice a permanent. So you could use your discard to, you know, strip creatures out of their hand so they're less likely to have blockers. That's not true. Why did I say that? Whenever Drinker of Sorrow deals combat damage, sacrifice a permanent. So if they don't have blockers, you deal combat damage, and then you still got to sacrifice a permanent.
Yeah. But
But
everything in your deck is super low mana curve, so you don't really care if you're killing your own lands, I feel like, in this deck.
everything is super low mana curve. Also, if you can, strip more cards out of their hand.
Oh,
What were you gonna say?
also with Rancor, you can sacrifice Rancor and it just comes back.
Oh yes, okay, yes. So that's important. Here's some important things to say. The Tempting Worm mostly synergizes with the discard. Yeah, the Drinker of Sorrow, you have things that you don't mind sacrificing. So
Carnophage.
Carnophage,
Yeah.
that's a 1 drop for 2/2. During your
Uh-huh.
upkeep, you pay 1 life or you tap it. So if you're tired of taking damage from the Carnophage, you can sack it to your Drinker of Sorrow. Uh,
You can
you have
drop Rancor to it.
the
Lands that you
Rancor.
don't need because nothing in your deck is more than 3 mana. And you have Gemstone Mines that maybe you've lost, like removed 2 counters from, and you can sacrifice that.
You have the Sarcomancy, which it comes into play. You put a zombie token into play. You treat the token as a 2/2 black creature.
Mhm.
During your upkeep, if there are no zombies in place, Sarcomancy deals 1 damage to you. But it's an enchantment and you have a token. So that gives you
Yeah.
two things to
So you
sack.
can sack the enchantment and keep the token if you need to. Urza's Bauble you can use to thin your deck, but if you need to, you could sacrifice it to that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works out better math-wise to do it or not, but
But there's at least like multiple valid sack targets
uh-huh.
to feed to your Drinker of Sorrow. Anywho,
Mesmeric Fiend was the one card that I was like a little bit shaky on in this. Like if I was like, what would I do to change this? That was one that I looked at. But then the more I think about it, I get to pick the best card from their hand, and that allows me to play the Tempting Worm without them casting their, giant angel
yeah,
creature or whatever.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and then it doesn't even come into play. It just goes back to their hand when the Mesmeric Fiend dies.
Yeah.
So,
So you don't necessarily get to take it from them permanently, but yeah, they don't get to drop it in response to your Tempting Worm.
right. So in other decks, I wouldn't like this card quite so much probably, but in here it definitely fits.
But that's why Drinker of Sorrow is spiking up in price. It's already starting to come down a little bit. So if you really want to play
Yeah,
this
you'll be
black
able
green
to
deck,
get. There's not that many people playing this deck, right? Like,
I,
it's just it'll come back down.
people are talking about it. It's getting a lot of play. But yeah, it's more like a flavor of the month, I think. It's not going to dominate the meta for years or dominate the format for
Algorithms
years.
caught on when they saw people selling it.
What'd you say?
I said the algorithms caught on when they saw
Oh,
people selling it,
yeah.
caused it to spike more.
But anyways, next one is another pre-modern card that we saw shooting up in price. This is a great card, actually. And I'm a little bit sad I didn't pick them up already for a cleric deck. Rutlung Reanimator.
I'm filled with rage, Steve. I need 3 more of these still.
It is 2 colorless, 1 black, a 2/2 zombie cleric. Whenever Rotlung Reanimator or another cleric is put into a graveyard from play, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token into play. This card pissed me off when I played against it before against cleric decks, because you get this out and another cleric, and then all my removal that I would, point towards clerics just ends up dropping another 2/2 zombie creature on the board, right? So it's really hard to clear a board out. It's really
And
hard to
there's some
clear a board
clerics
from
that you can
threats.
sacrifice for things,
That's when
so
it gets really bad. Yeah.
it works really well with those. Yeah, it's just overall very good for 3 mana.
Current market price of $8.18.
That's so. What's the deal with the average versus the market there? What's going on with this card?
It's always like that a lot. It's
Yeah.
like that a lot.
I'm gonna,
What happens is I don't know if it's always this extreme. Probably not. This is more than a twofold difference in the average versus the market. But whenever this happens, there's probably always algorithms or maybe just individuals who do this who just immediately like post these things for unreasonable prices on TCG Player, at
yeah.
least some copies, and they just don't sell. They just sit there, but it warps the average. The market price really reflects what people are currently buying it for,
Yeah.
like which cells are actually being completed.
I'm seeing lightly played for $9 or $10, near mint for 10 to 15 right now.
But yeah, it's a solid $8 to $10 card. It's a strong card. I just wanted it for cleric deck. I'm seeing people post more mono black clerics too on my timelines on the socials and stuff in pre-modern.
But
So it's just starting to, it seems like it's starting to get a little bit more play. But the real reason that it's going up, I think, is because of just the general renewed interest in zombies from Ether Drift. I don't think the small amount of increased interest in mono black clerics and pre-modern is responsible for this. I think it's that plus mostly
some new cards.
people just trying to pick up powerful old zombie related cards because of some of the big zombies that are being printed in Ether Drift. That's what we saw with Unfulfilled Desires and the Zombie Commander. I don't know if some of them are also clerics, but this puts a 2/2 black zombie creature token into play.
Yeah,
So
no,
I'm,
you're
I'm
probably right. Zombies, yeah.
thinking it had something to do with zombies. I don't know if this was in this article or not. Yeah, let me look at this. No, that's from 2020. But yeah, in the MTG Stocks article about the highlighted Unfulfilled Desires, there was just a statement early on that said either drift is having its effect on zombies. The modern metagame is still shaking prices up. So I think it's zombie related. And then
Zombie
here's
related.
here's an old school card that I saw going up in price. This one pisses me off
Oh,
because I'm always
don't
like,
get me
I should just buy
started.
4 copy artifacts, and I never buy 4 copy artifacts because I don't actually need them for anything right now. But I'm always like, I should get 4 copy artifacts, and I just never do it.
I've been meaning to buy one and I haven't done it.
This is obviously a card people were going to go after. Somebody was going to do it eventually. I kept waiting for it to get down to like $25,
Good
and it just
Lord.
didn't. It would get into the 30s, it would spike again. Now it's gone up like crazy. It's current market price of $83. It's 2x in price in the last like 2 months or so. This is for the revised printing of Copy Artifact. Current market price of $83.31. This is a rare from Alpha Beta Unlimited Revised. If you don't know, 1 colorless, 1 blue. Enchantment, select any artifact in play. This enchantment acts as a duplicate of that artifact. It is affected by cards that affect either enchantments or artifacts. The copy remains even if the original artifact is destroyed. Enchantments on the original artifact are not copied. So it's just an overall great card. It's a classic card. It gets tons of play in old school. Robots is a huge deck in old school. They typically run 4 copy artifacts.
When we
And
played this was a restricted card, you could only have one.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think. I think that was the case.
that sounds right to me too.
Um, but it also wasn't very expensive, so this is hard for me to stomach
Yeah.
seeing it this expensive, and that's why I didn't buy one yet because I'm like back in my mind, this should be a more affordable card, even though it's very
Price
good.
anchoring. Price anchoring, Alex. Sometimes keeps you out of markets that you should get into. Price anchoring is tough. You got to fight it. But also, do you have to fight it? Do you need to buy a $50 piece of cardboard? No, not really. But yeah, I kept waiting for it to get into the 20s. And then I'm like, that's, I'm going to buy two copies and maybe I'll pick up two more later. It's just not happening. It's
It's
not
also a
happening.
card I'm really surprised that I didn't end up with one or two copies of from back in the day that
Yeah,
I didn't still have a copy of this. Like,
I
oh,
feel like I should have copy artifacts too. But I
yeah.
also never really used them back.
Me
Never really
neither. I
used them.
always kind of recognized it and liked it, but I don't think I really had decks that used it, or every once in a while I'd throw it in somewhere.
None of us were very heavy on artifacts.
Well, we didn't have a lot of like
Yeah,
super banger artifacts from the
no, we
old
didn't.
school. We didn't have candelabras of Tanoses
Yeah,
and
we didn't have
candle
Moxes.
candelabra of Tanoses.
Candelabras of Tanoses, I think is how you should say it. We didn't have Moxes to copy for additional ramp. We didn't open antiquities packs, so we weren't running Force Uchis and Force Triskelions that
Yeah,
we were ramping out with our Mishra's
a lot of
workshops.
those powerful artifacts
Yeah.
were already like up in price when we were
Yeah.
playing in revised.
Yeah, I don't even know. I was trying to think back to all of our decks, like back in middle school, high school. I don't even know what we would have copied
Yeah, I
most
mean, like
often.
Force Field was a banger back then for us.
Yeah, I had a force field.
You're not going to copy your own Force Field, maybe your
No,
opponent's.
it never really good enough to. It was not worth copying. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you
Copy a
know,
Juggernaut with that bad boy though. Woo.
yeah, aggro blue.
I'd try that. That's interesting.
They're never going to stop printing good artifacts. So this is a card that's now on the reserve list. There's a ton of copies out there because Revise was huge. A big set. There was a lot of. It was printed heavily. Is what I'm trying to say. Uh, but still, they're never going to stop printing good artifacts. So there's always going to be better and better targets to copy. I should have I should have gone all in on copy artifacts and dual lands 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Such is life. Okay. I wanted to bring that one up, Alex. I figured it would piss you off. I was not done with
Thank
it.
you.
You're welcome. It's only going to keep going up from here as well. How will the tariffs affect Magic the Gathering prices, Alex? Tell me. Will the price of copy artifact go up or down on Liberation Day? Which I believe is what certain people are calling April
Yeah.
2nd.
Yeah. That's the name.
I'm not sure what we get liberated from. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. What is Canada doing to me that I need to be liberated from? I'm not unaware. Maybe I'm the ignorant one. Who knows? I am ignorant of a lot when it comes to a lot of things. Don't know anything about tariffs. I just need to know what they're going to do to price my cardboard and my Bitcoin. What's going to happen? Are they going to have the same effect on both? Are they both equally affected and in the same way, Alex, by tariffs?
No. No.
Cardboard and Bitcoin.
No.
Can I use one as a hedge against the other? That's what's most important to me. If
Maybe.
my
Maybe.
Bitcoin goes down, but my cardboard goes up,
I feel like
then
they're
I
going to
could.
go more in the same direction than opposite directions, but who knows?
I think they both go in the same direction because I think they're both asinine speculative assets,
Yeah.
and
As
one crashes
Bitcoin
the
goes up,
other.
more people buy Magic cards.
Yeah, because a bunch of dorks like both of these things.
But if the dollar collapses and Bitcoin becomes our only currency and the economy is in shambles and no one's buying cardboard, then they would diverge from each other substantially.
I remember when I first learned about Bitcoin. Can't remember the exact year. Pre 2010. Not that long after I heard about a big Bitcoin heist. It was a hacking of a Bitcoin exchange, like the largest
A
Bitcoin exchange.
virtual heist.
Yeah. And it was the Mount Gox. And I was like, what the fuck is Mount Gox? And I was looking at it. I was like, MTGOX. And then I did some reading and it started off as a, do you know this story? I don't know. I can't remember the details of it because it's been so long since I first learned about it. But it was originally a Magic the Gathering like trading site, I think.
Okay.
And they pivoted towards Bitcoin, became like an early Bitcoin exchange.
I know there was a connection. I don't know much
Yeah.
about it at all, but I know there is, yeah, there's some connection there between.
Mount Gox, a Bitcoin exchange based in Shibuya, Tokyo, Japan. Launched in 2010, it was handling over 70% of all Bitcoin transactions worldwide by early 2014. 2014, they suspended trading. Okay, so the liquidation and stuff, that happened a little bit later than I thought. So I probably learned about Bitcoin like sometime between 2010 and 2014. And then the Mount Gox shit happened in 2014. All this to say, there's always been like this weird intersection between the Bitcoin and Magic the Gathering worlds.
Uh-huh.
So when Bitcoin goes up, like the price of Magic shoots up because all these people are like, yes, I can buy Moxes now. So they sell their Bitcoin and
Yeah,
buy Power
I
9.
guess. Yeah.
Anyways, I got nothing else to say today. That's the end of episode 108.
That's it.
Thank you so much for listening to us talk about Jamie Wakefield and how he builds decks. Thank you for going through the Wakefield School article with us. Thank you for listening to us ramble about old frame magic cards that are going up in price because people have renewed interest in zombies. You may or may not hear us talk about Sands of Time. I think I'm going to cut that out. Alex and I talked about Sands of Time for a little while.
We were confused though.
And then I realized that I didn't actually know what the hell was happening in this combo that somebody was pointing out. So I think I'm just going to cut it because I sound stupid enough, like in other parts of the episodes. I don't want to also include the Sands of Time section where I sounded really stupid. I had no idea what was going on.
Thank you for tagging along with us as we stupidly learn about certain magic rules.
I followed up that embarrassing Sands of Time section with my mistake when I was discussing Drinker of Sorrow. When I was like, yeah, it's great if they can't block it because then it negates the downside. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You deal
I said
combat damage.
something incoherent about algorithms where I think I flip-flopped the laws of supply and demand. I can't remember.
I don't even know what the word algorithm means, Alex, but
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah. Just the boogeyman of inside the computer.
that's it. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Oh, no, I think nothing next week. We won't be here next week. I hope to be back within 2 weeks. I think we made you guys wait 3 or 4 weeks for this last episode, for this most recent one. I don't ever plan on doing that to you again. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to go 3 or 4 weeks without recording, but life happens sometimes. I hope to be back with you in 2 weeks from now. And I know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Premodern White Weenie, Alex. I got a nice little primer written by somebody I think named Gary Roth.
You
All
got a
about
little weenie primer?
all about Premodern White Weenie. I want to go through his little primer and I want to use it to try to upgrade my current Imperial White Weenie deck. I'm sure in his primer, he might mention Imperial Armor as probably a card that's not the best to play, but I'm not taking that out. That is staying in. Everything else can come out except for the Shadow Creatures and the Imperial Armor. If I take those out, it's just not the deck that I wanted to build. So we'll see how it evolves. I'll try to listen to the wisdom of Gary Roth. He plays a lot of White Weenie.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty good, I think. Heard him on some podcasts. That's it. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
I ain't gonna do this anymore. That's all from me. Goodbye.